This week, tune into the Paul Feinbaum Show as I discuss
the delicious taste of ice cold Dr. Pepper.
Larry Culpepper? Hey, I'm in the middle of a promo.
Sorry, Finey. The fans are craving so much Dr. Pepper, I thought I'd borrow some of your airtime.
Security!
Hey, look, whether you're watching college football or calling into some guy's radio show, Dr. Pepper makes college football that much sweeter. So head to your local Dollar General and grab some today.
Can I have one of yours?
Hey, we got a caller. You're on the Larry Culpepper Show with your host, Larry Culpepper.
That's it.
That's Dr. Pepper, the one fans crave.
Happy Wednesday, one day closer to another college football weekend with David Pollack, Desmond Howard. I'm Matt Berry. And I got to tell you, I was really happy to talk college football with you guys on a weekday. And the first thing Desmond says when I sit down is, "Where's Maria Taylor?"
Hey, you do a good job, but you don't look as good as Maria. That's not your fault.
Hey, we got my favorite Matt Berry on the show today.
Oh, good. Yeah, we'll keep the fantasy football Matthew Berry on the bench. I want to start
yeah, because I don't know nothing about that stuff.
No, we'll keep this all reality football. Second-ranked Penn State on the road at sixth-ranked Ohio State. Quietly, JT Barrett putting together a great season after the Oklahoma loss. Here's what Penn State head coach James Franklin had to say on Barrett.
JT Barrett has been playing at Ohio State for, I think, this is his 16th year, maybe going on 17. One of the most successful quarterbacks in school history, if not the most. One of the most successful quarterbacks in Big Ten history and nationally. I mean, you got to just completely respect everything that guy's been able to do in his career and everything I know about him and have heard about him. He's a class act.
And Pollack, as I said a second ago, we've kind of put the JT Barrett conversation on hold since the Oklahoma loss. I'm curious, we'll start with you. Which Barrett do you think we're going to get on Saturday?
Well, obviously you had the really bad Barrett versus Oklahoma, and then you've had the really good Barrett versus, frankly, inferior competition. I think you'll get somewhere in between, Des. I think you're going to get a guy that's going to make a lot of plays. I think he's going to run the football effectively. That's the one thing I've liked about this last stretch. He's been running the ball with more conviction, pushing the ball down the field a little bit more. Des, he ain't been pressured yet either. So I haven't seen him take hits, and then those eyes that tend to come down and not go back up, where that happens. So I think we'll get somewhere in the middle. You're not going to get 7 touchdowns. You're not going to get 5 touchdowns like you've seen against some of the inferior competition the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, well, guys, first of all, I agree with James Franklin. I've said this time and time again. It seems like JT Barrett has been in Columbus like since 1975. I don't know what he's going to – he may be working on his 3rd degree. I don't know. I hear he's a great kid. He's a tremendous leader, but he's been there for a very long time. And when you're there for a long time, you're going to accumulate a lot of statistics, a lot of numbers, and, he's – one of those guys who I think he broke Drew Brees' touchdown record or something. I think we're going to get the guy who's in between, like David said. After the Oklahoma game, they played a bunch of what you would call padding your stat games. You want to pad your stats? You play against, some of the opponents that they played against, UNLV, Maryland, Rutgers, the list goes on and on. This is actually the most meaningful game we've seen them, or we're going to see them play, since the Oklahoma game. So I'm anxious to see which JT Barrett shows up, because I think he's going to be put in the position now, Matt, that he's going to have to go like toe-to-toe, point for point with Penn State, because I think that they can score some points. They will score some points against the Buckeyes defense.
Yeah, and Des, you're talking about stats, 18 touchdowns, 0 interceptions in his last 5 games, padding stats, perhaps getting that confidence up a little bit from what we saw against Oklahoma. Now, the number currently sits Buckeyes a 6.5-point favorite. So, Desmond, do you like or don't like that Ohio State coming into this game, Penn State coming off the dominated win against Michigan, that they're a touchdown favorite?
Matt, I do not like that number at all, because the last time we've seen Ohio State play in any meaningful games, it was the Clemson game a year ago in the playoff. Even before that, they played Michigan in Columbus, and they just squeaked out a victory. No, they haven't beat any formidable opponents by a touchdown or more in a long time. So I don't like that 6.5-point favorite that they are in Columbus side. I don't like that number at all.
Yeah, I think I get it a little bit, because there's a lot of parallels between Michigan, Penn State last week and Ohio State, Penn State this week. And here's what I say. Ohio State coming off a bye, extremely fresh, at home, revenge from a year ago. Look at last week, Des. Penn State at home, coming off a bye, revenge from a year ago. Both good football teams. So I understand it. I can tell you this from being around Bear and all these gambling people for all this time. Like, when it's obvious like this, don't touch it. Don't touch the number. Don't gamble. There's a reason that it's obvious for that. But it will be fun to see Ohio State back in a competitive game where they actually can lose. If they don't bring their A game, they're going to lose.
Guys, this is what Ohio State does every year. They lose early on in the season. Everybody writes them off. They play the weak part of their schedule. And now they're going to get an opportunity, Desmond, on a big stage against the second-ranked team in the country to get themselves back in the conversation.
Correct. No, there's no doubt about that. Now, and they didn't really fall that far out of the conversation when they did lose to Oklahoma. I think they were still hovering around maybe 10 or something, somewhere in that area. So, but, all they can do is play their schedule, and then some teams ahead of them, lost. We had that, 2 weekends ago when, 4 of the top 10 teams in the country lost games. So there's nothing the Buckeyes can do about that. They just play their schedule and let the chips fall where they may.
Well, and they have notoriously, you've seen it over the last several years, gotten off to slow starts. But to their credit, too, they figure it out. I mean, whatever it is that they do, they adjust, they get to know their team, they play better down the stretch. And so, obviously, they deserve credit for that.
All right, so this next question, I get the impression if Pollock was sitting here on set with me, he'd punch me if I asked him this in person. We're looking at the Big Ten East. 3 teams in the top 25. You've got Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan State. Of course, Michigan just fell out of it. So, Desmond, I'm going to start with you because I want to get Pollock fired up. Is the Big Ten East the new SEC West where we've got just a slot of teams that are always ranked within the top 10?
Man, I think there's an argument for that comment. I think you could say that because it's so heavy at the top. When you look at the Penn States, the Ohio States, Michigan State, obviously they beat Michigan, but they still got some big tests ahead. So we still don't know a lot about Michigan State. And obviously Michigan just lost to Penn State. But those 4 teams are teams that I think you would put them up against just about anyone. And they would be, they would be very competitive and probably pick to win a lot of games. So I would say that I think the Big Ten, I think that cluster of teams right now is representing that conference very well.
So Matt, you're saying from the SEC West of old, when they were the most dominant conference.
Yeah.
You're not saying now, right?
Because no, not now.
Now the
when
SEC
you had Alabama,
West
LSU, all of them.
Oh,
exactly
okay. So when
right.
you had Alabama, Auburn, and LSU when they were in that stretch when they were dominating college football and all 3 winning national titles. Okay, that's several years ago, by the way. But here's what I'll say about that. You had all 3 of those teams win a national title. You haven't seen Michigan even close to that yet. You haven't seen Michigan State in that realm close to it yet. So no, I mean they're not. But they're still the most competitive side of any conference in college football to date right now. I just wouldn't put them in that elk yet until you see sustained success for a while and especially Michigan State winning a big bowl or Penn State if Penn State would have won the Rose Bowl a year ago and Ohio State would have actually won a playoff game or the championship, maybe you say that, but not for the postseason accomplishments.
Well, Ohio State did win the playoff game. They did win the championship. And that year that they won the championship, they just bludgeoned Alabama with the third-string quarterback. But, yeah, the other teams, they haven't won a national championship, so that's not the way we're measuring, to me, that particular division of the conference. Because if you measure like that, then no one competes and no one can compare to that SEC West at that point back in the day.
Back in the day. That's
now.
what I said. Back in the day.
Yeah. Right, yeah.
The dominance of Alabama in that SEC West with what we've seen now. Back in the day, you could argue that was one of the best divisions in all of sports, including the NFL. Still ahead on College Football Live. The Sooners escaped Manhattan, Kansas with a win, and they think they're headed for the college football playoff. Here from Baker Mayfield. That and more coming up on a Wednesday on College Football Live.
College Game Day, built by the Home Depot, live from Ohio State, Saturday at 9 a.m. on ESPN.
Welcome back to College Football Live. Let's take a look at clean performance brought to you by American Standard. Baker Mayfield clean in the Sooners' second-half comeback Saturday at Kansas State. Down 21-10 at the break. Mayfield led them back 410 yards, 4 touchdowns. Baker outspoken about the Sooners' playoff chances.
Like I said, we haven't even scratched the surface of what this team can be. We've seen flashes here and there, and you want to be playing your best ball towards the later end of the season. And so for us, I have no doubt right now. I think we're in a great spot to keep going and moving forward.
All right, so Desmond and David back for some quick hitters. Pollock, let's start with you. Do you agree with Baker's assessment that the Sooners haven't even scratched the surface?
Well, offensively, they're awesome. I mean, I'll put them up there with anybody in the country, and especially with that dude pulling the string, running the football, making decisions, buying time. Defensively, no, they haven't scratched the surface of anything because they're on the surface, they're terrible, and they need to do something about it. So, I mean, look, listen, you'd like to see improvement. I said it the other day. I put Oklahoma on upset alert every week from now on the rest of the season because of their defense and how bad they've been. They have to find a way to become better and be dominant in some facet of the game. Created a few turnovers last week in the ball game. At least if you're bad and you're getting beat up and down the field, at least create some turnovers to get that ball back to Baker Mayfield. And then Baker have to play really, really perfect to win ball games, and that's a tough recipe.
Yeah, I think that they haven't scratched the surface. I know they haven't scratched the surface in all 3 phases of the game. That's the problem: offense, defense, and special teams. And in order to win the championship, when you go on that road, that run late in the season, you're going to have to be proficient in all 3 phases of the game: special teams, offense, and defense. And I think that's what he's alluding to. If he's talking about their ability to reach the playoff, they don't control their own destiny, because I think a lot of other things have to happen, despite the fact, David, that they do have, they got some ranked teams down the road that they're going to play that can help boost their resume. I mean, they still got Oklahoma State. They're ranked 11th. They got TCU. They're number 4. And then they wrap up the season with the Mountaineers of West Virginia, who's ranked also at this point, too.
And then a Big Ten championship game. So I tell you what, I'll be willing to say this, Des. If they run the table, they're going to be in the college football playoff. But that's a hard task, what you just laid out.
Yeah, Desmond put it perfect. That schedule coming out, the Sooners are going to definitely be able to earn their way in, including a Big 12 championship game, so to get to that point. Let's switch gears now. What a difference a year makes for Notre Dame and NC State. This game last year, played in the middle of Hurricane Matthew and Raleigh, sloppy field, bad football, a 10-3 final. The combined record of the 2 schools after this game last season, 5-9. This season, they're combined 12-2. So, Desmond, how much has changed for both of these schools since last year?
Well, a lot. I mean, you look at South Bend, and obviously Coach Brian Kelly, he kind of just blew everything up. He brought in a new defensive coordinator, a new offensive coordinator, and they're committed to the run. And you look at North Carolina State, they probably can boast one of the best defensive fronts in all of college football that a lot of people aren't even talking about.
Oh, there's no doubt. And I think, too, when you spin it on the offensive side of the ball, for NC State, I think that's where the biggest turnaround for them is. Now, they used to just be a running football team. Now they can play action. Now they can make big shots down the field. Finley has really, really evolved. He can buy time, doesn't turn the football over. I mean, I think he's had 1 turnover all season long, so they've been really good with that. So both these teams squarely in the playoff discussion. And to say that a year ago when we were watching these teams in a hurricane and their seasons were already destroyed, so, I mean, it was definitely not a pretty sight.
Yeah, I don't even think either coach could look at last year's game as any indicator with the film based on what we saw with the weather and just the bad football. Here's a game near and dear to Pollock's heart, annual rivalry, Florida-Georgia in Jacksonville. Florida wide receiver Josh Hammonds had this to say about the game, and I quote, "We haven't lost to Georgia in the last 3 years. They might be the number 2 team in the country, but they can't beat Florida." Now, in addendum to this, Georgia head coach Kirby Smart asked his locker room to stand up if a player has beaten the Gators and no one stood up, because it hasn't been done with the players on the roster. So, Desmond, will Florida be able to back up the talk against second-ranked Georgia?
I tell you what, Matt, it's a rivalry. The thing that fuels a rivalry is when one team is ranked high and the other team has no business in this game, and they end up upsetting the higher-ranked team. So I think they do have a shot. They're not going to be intimidated. They have some confidence, and they're just going to go out there and play football, play loose, have fun, and hopefully bring their A game. So there is a chance that they can upset the Georgia Bulldogs.
And to me, rivalries equal passion. They equal hatred, Des. I mean, I know you got a few teams that when you lined up, and I tell you what, I can speak honestly as a Georgia Bulldog, as a former player. I hate Florida. I hated every part of playing them. I didn't like them. We didn't have a lot of success. And when we came in that stadium in half orange and blue, half red and black, it was one of those games. The coaches got tense all week long. It meant more. Adrenaline and emotion. Those games that are lacking during the week is when upsets happen. You don't have those in rivalry games. You hate them. They hate you. Let's just go smack the crud out of each other for a long time and get it settled.
You just get the sense, too, this sets up for McElwain to the Gators. It's a big point spread. Georgia's feeling good about themselves. Can't wait to watch that one in Jacksonville. Staying in the SEC now. More bad news for Tennessee football. Star running back John Kelly was one of two players cited for marijuana possession last night after being pulled over by Knoxville police for a headline being out. So, gentlemen, you've got the losses. You've got the Rashawn Golden middle finger incident last week against Alabama. Now the John Kelly citation. Add this all up, and it just does not look good for Tennessee football. So big picture, Desmond, I'll start with you. What does this program need?
A new start. Unfortunately, I think they need a new start. I mean, we've talked about Tennessee the last 3 weeks on the show and the job that Bush Jones. Too much on the show, and it's all been negative. And Bush Jones, I think it seems like the writing is on the wall because there isn't just bad play on the field that you can say, okay, we can overcome that. Like everything else points to a bad culture, almost like he's losing his team. So once you get into that type of situation, there needs to be a big change. So I don't see anything happening soon that's going to help them outside of a fresh start.
No, I mean, you got cryptic tweets. You got players getting now in trouble. The product on the field being very bad. I mean, what else is there to say, Matt? There's nothing to salvage right now. There's nothing we can point to that's positive going on at Tennessee.
Yeah, I think Desmond put it perfectly when he says that when you've got all these incidents, add them up, you lose control of the program, and that's something that the administration is going to have to look at when we eventually get to the offseason. Still ahead on College Football Live, we're going to play a little fair or foul with some heavy road favorites. Some of these numbers might jump out at you. And a quick reminder, coming up on this weekend, we've got a big game in the ACC. Georgia Tech, Clemson at Clemson. Can they rebound from that loss on the road against Syracuse? Check your local listings to find out. Plus, Texas Tech and Oklahoma, that one Saturday night prime time. Can the Oklahoma offense stop the Texas Tech, or the Oklahoma defense, rather, stop the Texas Tech offense? That and more coming up this weekend. College football returns after this.
Computer, execute 12.4p operation.
Optimizing algorithm. Running encryption packet alpha. Night. Oh, I don't feel so good.
What is it, computer?
Is it hot in here? It feels hot in here. I feel a little clammy. I should lie down or something.
A computer with a virus? Surprising. What's not surprising? How much you could save by switching to Geico.
Those oysters Rockefeller were a mistake.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Welcome back to College Football Live. Let's do a Wednesday tradition now. Time for fair or foul. First one, TCU, a 6.5-point favorite at Iowa State. Pollock, fair or foul?
Fair. I like it. I like the Horned Frogs. I like their defense. Even when their offense sputters a little bit, they're going to keep you in it. I know everybody's talking about Ames, Iowa now, which means, guess what, Matthew? Now everybody's focusing on it. It's serious. TCU knows its business. They'll actually come in focused.
I think it's foul, man. Those guys are playing great football right now. They went on the road earlier in the season and took it to Oklahoma. Obviously, they beat Texas Tech last week. They're playing really good defense. They're scoring points. I think this is going to be a shootout, much closer than the experts think, sweetheart.
Okay, there it is. First one, foul for Dez, fair for Pollock. Number two, Arizona State coming off back-to-back wins against Washington and Utah. 3.5-point underdog at home against USC. Fair or foul, Pollock?
I'm going fair again. I tell you what, USC also coming off getting punched in the mouth by Notre Dame. I believe Sam Darnold and company can respond. I know Arizona State's playing really, really well, all two wins, but I'll take USC Trojans.
Oh, man, another foul ball right here. Listen, man, USC,
Long
what happened
foul
to them
ball,
a week ago up in South Bend? Yeah, man, I don't know if they can recover from that. Don't forget all the hype this team came into the season with, and Sam Darnold was the guy. He already had Sam written on the Heisman. They were just waiting to put Darnold on it. And now the way these guys have tanked, that is foul.
All right, the line moved to 3 in this conversation, so maybe one of you two swayed it your way. Finally, Desmond, we've got a nooner in Morgantown. Oklahoma State struggled last week on the road at Texas. 7-point favorite on the road at West Virginia. Des, we'll start with you. Fair or foul?
I think that one's foul, too. I think the Mountaineers are tough at home, and Oklahoma State, to watch them struggle the way they did against Texas was an eye-opener for me because I thought they were going to beat them by at least 2 touchdowns with the wide receiving core that they have. So I think this is going to be another tough game. 7 points? Nah, man. Mountaineers are going to rise up.
Yes, I'll take foul on this one. I think West Virginia, not only will they cover, I think they'll win the football game. I'm not buying Oklahoma State. I haven't been. Last week I thought Texas would beat them. Texas doesn't have an offense at all. At all. I mean, it's bad. West Virginia can score points, go tick with that. They're not going to hold them down like they did last week, but I'll take WV with 7.
Yeah, this sets up for Dana Holgorsen to make a statement early on a Saturday morning. People not paying attention. Fair or foul, That was fun with you guys. Coming up next, College Football Live, we're going to give them some love, and that list includes Lane Kiffin. Can't wait to shed some love on a Wednesday afternoon. Plus, we just talked about a second ago, the Big 12, a marquee game. Everybody knows about Ames, Iowa now, TCU, Iowa State, ABC. Big one of the Big 12. Check local listings, 3:30 Eastern. And as always, streaming live on the ESPN app. All right, before we leave, let's give him some love. Lane Kiffin, FAU, averaging 48.2 points over the last 5 games. Desmond, we'll start with you. Give FAU some love.
Yeah, man, we know one thing we knew about Lane is that he's a pretty good offensive-minded coach. He brought in Kendall Browse to bring in that Baylor offense. So you knew they were going to score a lot of points, David.
Love. There you go. I gave him love.
All right, I'm going to give you guys some love because next time I host College Football Live, looking at you two, now I know I can wear a T-shirt for Desmond, for Pollock.
Des, give me the memo next time I can wear a polo, man. Come on.